What's up, guys? Got this Craftsman snowblower in with this Briggs and Stratton engine on it. Pretty common engine. You'll see it a lot. Customer asked me to get this ready for him for the season. When I'm trying to start it, I put fresh gas in. It was empty, but I put fresh gas in, and when I'm trying to start it, I smell a lot of stale gas, which tells me they emptied the tank, but they didn't empty the carburetor. So I'm trying to get it through, but it's not getting through. So I think the jets are clogged. So I'm going to show you real quick how to do this, just to clean this carburetor. So once I pull this cover off, I'll be able to spray some fuel in there and make sure it's not a spark or compression problem, which I doubt because the customer said it ran fine last year. So right off the bat, let's go ahead and get this cover off, get right down to the carburetor. So the first thing you got to do, pull this choke lever off, come straight up, and we'll get these wing nuts off. Sometimes these wing nuts get rusted, so you might have to play with them a little bit to, or spray them to get them freed. All right, and this will get out of the way. Just be careful. You have this wire here. This goes to the kill switch, which looks like it's broken off, but that shouldn't matter. That won't prevent it from starting, because that just makes the key work. Right now it's basically disconnected, so it'll start without it. But what I can do now is get down to the carburetor and get a little bit of fuel in there and see if we can get it to start with just a little bit of fuel. Try to get some fuel in there. That did exactly what I wanted it to do. So I know I have compression, I know I have spark, but it's telling me that the fresh fuel I put in isn't getting to the carburetor, or it's not getting up through the carburetor into the intake. So I'm going to take this cover off. This is pretty simple repair, just a lot of stuff in the way. Sometimes you can give yourself a little more room. What I'm going to do is disconnect the kill switch and the primer hose. All right, we'll get those two out of the way. Now with a 5/16 bolt, this cover will come out of the way. Now, because I know I have fuel in here, I'm going to clamp the fuel line so I don't get fuel running into my running out of the carburetor when I disconnect this. So let's take the fuel line off. Get that out of the way. I'm going to rotate this a little bit just to try to break the seal. There we go. I like to inspect the fuel line, make sure it's not dry rotted. Actually, it is. I like to inspect the fuel lines. This one's starting to get a little dry rotted. It's cracking on the inside. So, while I'm in here, I'll replace this. I just want to make sure I get it running first. So I'll replace this once after I clean the carburetor. I'm going to pull the tank off and do the fuel line as well. So now I'm going to come in here, get these, just to get this bracket out of the way so I can get to the bolts behind it. Now these are 10mm. And they're very tight for some reason. All right, so now that that's off, these are off, let's get the 10mm bolts out. Then this intake bracket gets out of the way. And now to get the governor and the spring off, you just pull the spring towards you, that'll pop off. And then tilt the carburetor inward, pull on the governor, and that'll pop off. All right, so I can feel the bad gas. I can smell it, it's sticky. So let's get this over the bench and give it a good cleaning. And then check it out, see if we can make it run. All right, first thing we'll do is get the bolt off the bottom, which is actually the jet. And I can tell you right now, this is pretty gross in here. It's real bad. This is what happens when you leave the fuel in over the summer. The bowl is a little stuck. There we go. Break that seal. And there's some of the fuel that's left over. Pretty ugly. Pretty bad. Look at the bottom of the carburetor there. So we got to get this all cleaned up. This is pretty sticky, crystallized, gooey gasoline. In small quantities like this, it's never going to last. That's why it's important that you run your carburetor completely dry. All right. So check out my other videos. just to see videos how to drain your fuel at the end of the year. So that this doesn't happen every year for you. Get this gasket out of the way to replace that. It's starting to get hard. And I'm going to spray this up a little bit. I can see why no fuel is getting in. The needle isn't moving at all. It's stuck. And I can't even get the pin out. It's basically glued in there with some bad gas. So I'll have to soak this probably for a little bit. But I'm going to see if I can get it freed up with a little bit of carb cleaner. Pin moved. Let's see if we can get that out. There we go. And there we go. So that came out, but it was pretty sticky in there. If you're gonna soak these, especially if it's anything that's like carb cleaner, you got to be careful of the seat that's in there. That's rubber that will get eaten away by when you soak them. So I think what I'm gonna do is just kind of spray this a little bit, clean it up, see if I can do this without having to soak it. Going to hit a little bit of the bottom of this with the wire wheel and then clean up the inside of this seat area. It's a little bit better. Right, you can see here that the primer line is also broken. So I was going to replace that anyway, but I'll show you where you can get that. Alright, now that the carb's pretty good, I think it would be fine like this. I want to go ahead and clean up the needle, clean up the bowl, clean up the float, clean up the jet, and then we'll put new gasket in there. So I'm going to let that soak for a little bit in some carb cleaner. Make it a little looser, and then we'll clean it up. Just want to make sure that the needle is nice and clean on the side. Sometimes stuff gets built up on the edges here and then it won't slide up and down. It gets stuck. See how you got a little bit of gunk on there? Let that soak as well. And the needle. Let's get this drain plug bolt gasket off. And we got to get this jet cleaned up pretty bad. I like to use these torch tip cleaners to get a lot of the gunk out of there if it's stuck before air. And so they're free now. So we just got to clean up the outside and get anything in it that's inside that could be sitting around out of there. All right, I like to hit this with the wire wheel lightly. Just get a bunch of this crud off the side. Works pretty good. All right, see, it cleans up pretty good. It's gonna try to blow some air through it quick. I like to cover one hole, blow air through it, make sure I can feel it coming out of the other side, and I do. All right, let's clean up the float. Not too bad. Probably let it soak for a little bit while I clean the rest of the stuff and one more time, but otherwise that should be fine. So sometimes this is real hard to clean the dried fuel out of the bottom of these bowls. I'm trying to like scratch it up a little bit and let it soak a little bit longer. So I'll let that soak for a while. I'm going to go find some new gaskets for this, and then once that soaks, we'll clean that up and put it back together. All right, I have my replacement gaskets to replace these guys when it's all ready to go back together. So something that works pretty good with the old gas at the bottom, after scraping it a little bit, is using a Brillo pad. Usually works pretty good to clean it up. You don't want to do this too rough. This is a thin aluminum, and you wear it pretty thin, you'll end up with pinhole leaks in the bottom of your carburetor, your bowl. So nice and light, just try to get the surface off. A little bit's not going to hurt it. All right, bowl looks pretty good. I've been happy with that. I think the float's decent. It'll work. A little bit of dried fuel in there, but that's not going to hurt anything. All right, that's pretty good. Nice and clean, pretty shiny. All right, you don't want it to hang up into that carburetor at all. And then the pin, you want to make sure that's nice and clean. Looks pretty good. All right, the only thing I want to do is make sure that this was nice and free of any old gas. So to check this, you can just take the needle and just go in and out, make sure it doesn't hang up at all. It should be nice and smooth, just like that. Okay. All right, let's get this back together. So needle hangs from the float. Drop that into place like that. Okay. We get the pin coming in. If you're having a hard time getting the pin through, use these use the torch tips like I was talking about, and just kind of go through there a few times. Again, gas gets in there and locks it up, gets a little gunked up, and then your pin should go in real easy, just like that. Okay. So again, bowl hanging from the needle hanging from the bowl. Put it through there. Stick the needle in. Good. All right. So you can test this to see, make sure it's sealing by blowing into the fuel inlet and moving this up and down. I'll try that real quick. Okay. So when this comes up, fuel stops. When it goes back down, fuel goes back in, and it's working just like it is. So let's go ahead and get the bowl gasket on. Okay. This slides right on. Now the bowl. New drain plug gasket and the jet. It's a 1/2 inch bolt usually. All right, that should be it. Let me cut a new piece of primer line and a new piece of fuel line. We'll take that tank off and get that fuel line replaced right away. I buy my primer line in bulk. I'm just going to go a little bit longer than the original. Get rid of the old one. And that just goes on right here. All right, time to reinstall the carburetor. So let's get the governor arm on first. Like that, and then the spring right away. There we go. And this intake collar. And then a 2 10mm bolts. Now we got to get the fuel line on. Push that down. Now we'll release the fuel. Now this bracket goes on next. And then this bracket goes on. Gotta put this on. But if I want this key to work, I need to reconnect it to this clamp up here. We'll get the primer line hooked up. When I push that, should hear some fuel coming in there, which is good. When hooking up the choke, there's a narrow and wide side, so the wide side's this way. Okay, that clips on like that, but you can't really see it from once this is on. So wide side's here. There it goes. All right, now we'll put the wing nuts on. Let's tighten up those two guys. Choke is on. Let's give it a few primes. See if we can get it to start. All right, cool. I'm happy with that. Not that hard of a job. Technically, you probably get away with reusing some of those gaskets that were in there, but not expensive to replace. So guys, hit me up in the comments if you've run into something like this. This is a common problem to have with the carburetors. Can fix it yourself, or you might have to take it to a shop if it's above your capabilities. But that's all. So that's all it's involved. So check out some of my other videos, and also make sure to like and subscribe down here. And catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching.